In the remote mountains of Montana, a legendary warrior awakens. The Mexican cartel thought they were buying up another quiet farm. They thought they were dealing with a defenseless old man. But Wade Thorne is a ghost from America's most classified, a Delta Force commander whose name once made entire armies tremble, who could eliminate targets and vanish without a trace. Now they've chosen the wrong farm, the wrong man. In 5 days, an entire cartel operation will learn the fatal lesson that some warriors never truly retire. Some vengeance runs deeper than blood, and some phantoms are more dangerous when cornered. Before we jump back into the video, let us know where you're watching from, and if you're enjoying this story. Don't forget to subscribe, because I have something really special for you tomorrow. And now, back to the video. The morning frost crunched under Wade Thorne's boots as he walked his property line. Dawn was breaking over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. His German shepherd Atlas trotted beside him, alert and watchful, as always. At 65, Wade still moved with the fluid grace of a much younger man, his eyes constantly scanning his surroundings, old habits that had kept him alive through 3 decades of combat. His weathered face and farmer's attire concealed a lifetime of classified operations and the lethal skills that had earned him the call sign, Phantom. Something wasn't right. Wade knelt to examine fresh tire tracks in the mud. Atlas growled softly, in agreement. The tracks were deep, made by heavy vehicles, and they weren't from any local trucks he recognized. Sarah Bennett, his closest neighbor, pulled up in her weathered pickup. "Wade, thank God you're out here. Did you hear about the Hendersons?" Wade straightened, brushing dirt from his jeans. "What about them?" "They're gone. Just packed up and left last night. No warning. But this morning I saw men at their place. Big black SUVs. Guys who don't look like they're from around here." Cartel. Wade's voice was calm, but his mind was already racing through scenarios, analyzing threats, forming plans. Sarah nodded, her hands gripping her steering wheel tightly. "That's what they're saying in town. They've been moving up from the south, buying up properties. Those who don't sell, well, they find other ways to persuade them." "Have they approached you yet?" "No, but Miller's place went last week. Same thing. Mysterious buyers, too much money to refuse. Those who stick around say they're using the farms for distribution routes." "Makes sense," Wade said, his tactical mind already mapping it out. Isolated properties, legitimate cover for vehicle traffic, storage facilities already in place. Sarah leaned out her window, lowering her voice. "Wade, these aren't ordinary criminals. They're organized, well-funded. The sheriff's out of his depth, and nobody else will stand up to them." Wade patted the side of her truck. "Don't worry about me, Sarah. I've dealt with worse." After she drove away, Wade whistled for Atlas and headed toward his barn. Inside, beneath the ordinary tools and farm equipment, lay a hidden cellar he'd installed when he first bought the property. Old paranoia, his friends had called it. Wade called it preparation. He lifted the false floorboard, revealing a cache of equipment he'd hoped never to use again. Military-grade communications gear, weapons, tactical gear, everything he'd need if things went south. He'd spent his entire career planning for worst-case scenarios. This wouldn't be any different. His phone buzzed, a text from an old contact in law enforcement. "Cartel's moving hard and fast. 7 properties taken in the last month. Watch your back." Wade pocketed the phone and moved to his office, pulling out detailed maps of the valley. His property sat at a crucial junction, controlling the main road and overlooking 3 different approach routes. No wonder they wanted it. The sound of vehicles on the main road caught his attention. Through his window, he watched 3 black SUVs roll past his gate, moving slowly, too slowly. Reconnaissance, marking the next target. "Atlas," Wade said, scratching his dog's ears. "They don't know who they're dealing with." He spent the rest of the morning making calls to old teammates, men who'd fought beside him in places that didn't officially exist, carrying out missions that would never see the light of day. "Knox, it's Phantom. Remember that favor you owe me? Time to pay up. Wade, been a long time. How bad is it? Cartel's moving into the valley, taking farms, setting up distribution networks. They'll be here soon. A low whistle from the other end. Need some backup? Might not hurt to have the old team together again. One last mission. You know we're not as young as we used to be. Wade smiled grimly. Neither are they. Call the others. We've got work to do. By afternoon, Wade's plans were in motion. 4 of his old team members were en route. Knox Reaper Winters, their sniper, Cyrus Blast Alvarez, demo expert, Zane Ghost Voss, communication specialist, and Nash Patch Kestrel, their medic. Together, they'd face down warlords, terrorists, and armies. A cartel wouldn't know what hit them. Wade walked his property again as the sun began to set, this time with different eyes, not as a farmer, but as a battlefield commander. Every hill, every tree line, every approach could be used. The cartel thought they were targeting an old man's farm. Instead, they were walking into a kill zone designed by one of the most experienced special operations commanders in history. Atlas barked suddenly, alerting Wade to more vehicles approaching. The same SUVs from earlier, this time stopping at his gate. Wade straightened his back, adjusted his worn baseball cap, and prepared to play the role of a simple farmer. Let them think he was harmless. Let them underestimate him. It was a mistake they would only make once. 5 men emerged from the SUVs, their expensive suits out of place against the rugged Montana landscape. Wade counted 2 more staying with the vehicles, hands concealed beneath jackets. Atlas growled softly beside him, but a gentle touch from Wade kept him quiet. Felix Espinoza Reyes led the group, his polished boots crunching on gravel as he approached. His smile was practiced, professional, but his eyes were cold as winter steel. Mr. Thorne, beautiful property you have here. Felix extended his hand. Wade took it, noting the man's grip. Too firm, trying to establish dominance. An amateur's tactic. What can I do for you, gentlemen? Wade's voice was friendly, measured, playing the role of a simple farmer while his mind catalogued every detail. 2 men moving toward his barn, trying to be subtle about it. One by the gate with a radio, military training, but sloppy. They'd grown too comfortable. We represent an investment group, Felix said, gesturing to the valley. We've been acquiring properties in the area, expanding operations, you might say. Your land, it has certain features that interest us. Wade leaned against his fence post, the picture of relaxation. Inside, he was marking fields of fire, cataloging weapons, noting their stances. Ex-military, at least 3 of them. The others were muscle, used to intimidating civilians. Not interested in selling, Wade said simply. Land's been in my family too long. Felix's smile tightened. Perhaps I wasn't clear. We're prepared to offer significantly above market value. $3 million cash, more than generous for a ranch this size. Wade scratched Atlas behind the ears, buying time to observe the 2 men by his barn. They were checking sight lines, defensive positions, not real estate investors. Advanced team mapping the property for an assault. Money's not everything, Wade replied. Some things aren't for sale. The friendly facade cracked slightly. Felix stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mr. Thorne, let me be direct. This valley is changing. Progress, you might say. You can be part of that change and profit from it. Or, Wade's voice remained calm, even as he noted the subtle shift in the men's positions surrounding him. Standard intimidation formation. Or you might find this valley becoming very unwelcoming. Accidents happen, especially to stubborn old men who don't know when to take a good deal. Wade straightened slowly, allowing just a hint of steel to enter his voice. Sounds like a threat, Mr. Reyes. Felix's eyes widened slightly at the use of his name, a name Wade shouldn't have known, a calculated slip to let them know he wasn't as ignorant as he appeared. Simply stating facts? Felix recovered quickly. The valley is changing. Fighting it would be unwise. One of the men by the barn called out in Spanish something about security cameras. Wade had let them spot the obvious ones, hiding his real surveillance system much more carefully. "Think about it," Felix said, producing a business card. "You have 24 hours. After that, the offer becomes significantly less generous." Wade took the card, noting the fake company name, standard Cartel front. "I'll sleep on it. See that you do." Felix turned to leave, then paused. Beautiful dog. German Shepherd, yes? Would be a shame if something happened to him. Atlas growled, picking up on Wade's tension. Wade kept his hand gentle on the dog's head, but his voice carried the weight of 3 decades of combat experience. That would be a very serious mistake. Something in his tone made Felix hesitate, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and Wade saw genuine surprise. They had expected an easy mark, a simple farmer they could bully or buy. Instead, they'd caught a glimpse of something else, something that set off warning bells. The cartel men retreated to their vehicles, trying to maintain their confident swagger. Wade watched them drive away, already planning his next moves. His phone buzzed, a text from Knox. 4 hours out, teams assembled. Wade typed back, "Make it 3. Company's already knocking." Inside his house, Wade activated his real security system. Cameras hidden in trees covered every approach. Motion sensors monitored the perimeter. Everything fed into a command center he'd built in his basement, a holdover from years of planning for worst-case scenarios. He pulled up satellite images of the valley, marking known cartel properties. 7 farms taken in the last month, each one strategic. His land was the missing piece, controlling the main valley access point and providing clear lines of sight for miles. His phone rang again. Sarah, her voice tight with worry. "Wade, they were at your place, weren't they? I saw the SUVs." "Just a friendly business proposition," Wade replied, checking his weapons cache. "Nothing to worry about. Don't lie to me." Miller tried to stand up to them. Next day, his barn burned down. Day after that, his wife's car crashed on a straight road. No witnesses. "Sarah, listen carefully. Next few days, stay with your sister in Missoula. Don't tell anyone you're going. Wade, what are you planning? Better you don't know. Just trust me." After hanging up, Wade descended into his cellar. The hidden room was exactly as he'd left it. Weapons and equipment maintained and ready. He began checking each piece methodically, muscle memory taking over as he field-stripped and reassembled rifles. Atlas whined softly from above. Wade paused, listening. Another vehicle approaching. Different engine sound. He checked the cameras. Local sheriff's department. Deputy Mike Hayes, young and out of his depth but honest. Wade met him at the gate. Hayes looked nervous, shuffling, his feet. "Mr. Thorne, heard you had visitors today. Word travels fast. Listen, about the others. Miller, the Hendersons. We know what happened, but we can't prove anything. These people, they're connected. Evidence disappears. Witnesses change their stories." Wade nodded. "And you're here to advise me to take the deal?" Hayes looked ashamed. "They own half the valley already. Fighting them, it's suicide." "Appreciate the warning, Deputy, but I can handle myself." As Hayes drove away, Wade's phone chimed again. A message from Zane. "Intercepted their comms. Full assault planned. They're not waiting 24 hours. Wade smiled grimly. "Perfect. Let them come in force. Let them think they had the advantage." 3 decades of combat experience had taught him that overconfident enemies made mistakes, and he'd learned long ago how to turn those mistakes into opportunities. He had 3 hours until his team arrived. 3 hours to turn his farm into a fortress. The cartel thought they were dealing with a stubborn old man. By morning, they'd realized their mistake, but by then, it would be far too late. Knox arrived first in his black pickup, followed by Cyrus in a weathered Jeep. Zane and Nash pulled in minutes later, their vehicles covered in dust from back road driving. Wade met them in the barn, away from prying eyes. 20 years melted away as his old team assembled, their movements still synchronized after all this time. Knox carried his custom rifle case like it was part of him. Cyrus brought enough explosives to level a small town, all carefully concealed in construction equipment cases. Zane's communication gear looked civilian, but could crack military-grade encryption. Nash's medical kit was upgraded, but familiar. He'd patched them up through worse situations than this. "Just like old times," Knox said, his voice gruff but warm. "Though usually we had government backing us up." "Government would just slow us down," Cyrus replied, already examining the barn structure. "Nice setup, Wade. Good sight lines, multiple. Escape routes. You weren't kidding about being ready." Wade spread a detailed map across his workbench. Cartel's been systematic, taking key properties, establishing distribution routes. They're not just running drugs, they're setting up a permanent operation. Zane connected his laptop, bringing up intercepted communications. They're professional. Ex-military in their ranks, mostly Mexican special forces, but they're arrogant, sloppy with their security. "Their mistake," Nash observed, organizing his medical supplies. "How many are we dealing with?" "Main force is 30 men," Wade pointed to marked locations. "Two separate groups. First team's the muscle. They handle intimidation, arson, accidents. Second team's their professionals, actual combat experience, proper tactical training." Knox examined the terrain through the barn door. "Kill zone's perfect. Natural bottleneck here. High ground advantage. We can funnel them right where we want them." "They'll come in force," Wade warned. "No more pretense of being businessmen. They've got heavy weapons, armor, probably air support." "Good," Cyrus grinned, pulling out his demolition plans. "Been a while since we had a proper fight." "This isn't just about holding them off," Wade's voice turned serious. "We end this permanently. Not just here, we shut down their entire operation in the valley." The team sobered, recognizing the tone. It was the voice that had led them through. Impossible missions that had brought them all home alive when the odds said otherwise. "Why'd you really come?" Wade asked, looking at each man. "You could have stayed retired, stayed safe." Nash spoke first, his medical bag open beside him. "Remember Kosovo? That village we found after the militia went through? Some things you can't walk away from. Some fights need fighting." "Cartels took my cousin's farm in Texas," Cyrus added, checking detonator wires. "By the time anyone could do anything, it was too late. Not happening again. Not here." Knox just shrugged, but his eyes were hard. "You called. That's enough." Zane looked up from his computer. "They're moving faster than we thought. Intercepted orders, main force mobilizing for tonight. No warning, no negotiation. They're coming to take the farm and send a message." "Perfect," Wade smiled grimly. "Let's give them a message of their own." They spent the next hour fortifying key positions. Cyrus rigged the main road with explosives that could flip an armored vehicle. Knox set up 3 different sniper nests, each covering a different approach. Zane established a command center in Wade's basement, linking their communications and surveillance. "Remember Kandahar?" Knox asked as they worked. "That night raid that went sideways when the whole city lit up?" Cyrus chuckled. "Never saw so much firepower in my life." Until Wade called an audible. "And turned their own defenses against them," Nash added. "Still don't know how you knew that would work." "Simple," Wade said, checking ammunition stores. "People get predictable when they think they have the advantage. Cartel's the same way. They're used to civilians, used to easy victories. They won't be ready for what's coming." Zane's voice crackled over their earpieces. "Movement at the Henderson place. They're assembling their force. Thermal imaging shows at least 20 vehicles." "They're not subtle anymore," Cyrus observed, finishing his last explosive trap. "Coming in like an army." "Good," Wade replied. "Means they're scared. Scared men make mistakes." The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the valley. Wade stood with his team on the porch, watching the day fade. They were no longer young men, but age had brought something else. Experience, patience, the kind of wisdom that only comes from decades of combat. Knox, I want you in the North Tower. Best sight lines, and they won't expect anyone up there. Cyrus, rig the barn for remote detonation. Make it look like a tempting target. Zane, keep monitoring their comms. The moment they split their forces, we take advantage. Nash, medical station in the basement, but be ready to move. This gets hot, we'll need you mobile. Each man nodded, understanding their roles without need for further explanation. This wasn't their first impossible mission, just maybe their last. One more thing, Wade added, his voice carrying the weight of command. We're not just defending a farm. We're defending every family in this valley, every person these bastards would victimize. We do this right, we do it clean, and we do it permanent. Through their surveillance, they watched the cartel force assembling. Military vehicles, heavy weapons, professional operators. They thought they were preparing to raid an old man's farm. Instead, they were walking into a trap laid by some of the most experienced combat veterans alive. The radio crackled. Zane's voice was tight. First wave moving out. ETA 20 minutes. Copy that, Wade replied, signaling to his team. Remember, let them get comfortable. Let them think they have the advantage. Then we show them what real soldiers can do. The Montana sun disappeared behind the mountains, plunging the valley into darkness. But darkness had always been their ally. In the shadows, Wade Thorne wasn't a farmer anymore. He was Phantom again, the ghost that hunted other ghosts. And he was about to remind the cartel why that name had once struck fear into the hearts of far more dangerous men than them. Moonlight silvered the Montana landscape as Wade watched the cartel convoy approach through his night vision scope. 20 vehicles moving in formation. Someone had trained them well. Too bad they'd forgotten the first rule of combat. Never fight on ground your enemy has prepared. They're splitting up, Zane's voice crackled through the comm. 3 teams, main force coming up the central road, 2 flanking units trying to circle wide. Knox's voice was cold and professional from his sniper's nest. Got eyes on the lead. Vehicle. Officer types in the back seat. Want me to take the shot? Negative, Wade replied. Let them get comfortable. Spring the trap on my mark. The convoy's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the road to Wade's farm. They moved with confidence, no attempt at stealth. Why bother? They thought they were hunting an old man. Contact in 2 minutes, Cyrus reported. Charges are set. These boys are in for a surprise. Wade watched through his scope as the first vehicles reached his outer perimeter. The cartel soldiers emerged with military precision, weapons ready, moving in practiced formations. Felix Espinoza. Reyes stepped out of an armored SUV, directing his men with hand signals. Spread out, Felix ordered in Spanish. I want this place surrounded. No one gets out alive. They're deploying heavy weapons, Zane warned. 50 cals on the trucks, RPGs. In the second wave, Wade's voice remained calm. Stick to the plan. Let them commit. The cartel forces advanced steadily, moving past the first line of Wade's defenses without noticing them. 50 meters, 40, 30. They were almost in position. Sir, one of Felix's men, called out. No movement in the house. Thermals showing nothing. Felix grabbed his radio. Check the barn. He has to be here somewhere. 3 cartel soldiers approached the barn, weapons ready. Wade watched them through his scope, counting down in his head. This was the moment that would set the tone. Now, Wade commanded. Cyrus detonated his first series of charges. The ground erupted beneath the lead vehicles, sending them airborne in a shower of dirt and metal. Before the dust settled, Knox opened fire from his hidden position. 2 cartel soldiers dropped before they realized they were under attack. What the hell? Felix shouted, diving for cover. Where's the fire coming from? The night exploded into chaos. Wade's team had prepared kill zones throughout the property, and now they put them to use. Every time the cartel forces tried to rally, They found themselves caught in interlocking fields of fire. 3 trying to flank east, Knox reported, calmly, his rifle cracking in the darkness. Got them. Cyrus responded with a series of explosions that drove the flanking team right into Nash's line of fire. Wade moved like a ghost through the darkness, years of combat experience guiding every step. He caught 2 cartel soldiers by surprise, disarming one and using him as a shield against the other's fire. Both went down without a sound. "Who are these guys?" a cartel soldier screamed over their radio. "This isn't right. They're too organized." Felix's voice cut through the chaos. "They're professionals. Fall back to the vehicles. Reform defensive. Positions." "Too late," Wade whispered, triggering another set of charges. The explosions cut off their retreat, trapping the cartel forces in the kill zone. Knox's rifle spoke again. "Technical at your 3 o'clock, Wade. Gunner down but driver's still up." Wade rolled behind a tractor as 50 caliber rounds tore through the air where he'd been standing. The technical's driver was good, keeping the vehicle, moving to avoid return fire, but he'd forgotten to watch his flanks. "Cyrus," Wade called. "Time to use that toy you brought." A rocket streaked through the darkness, striking the technical's engine block. The vehicle flipped, cartwheeling, off the road in a ball of flame. "Damn, I missed that," Cyrus laughed. "Just like Damascus." "Stay focused," Wade ordered. "They're regrouping." Felix had managed to rally his remaining men behind the wreckage of their vehicles. They had training. Wade gave them that. Even caught by surprise, they were adapting. "Quickly, Zane, what's their strength?" 18 still combat effective. They're calling for reinforcements. Second wave is 30 minutes out. They won't last that long, Knox stated flatly, his rifle ending another cartel soldier's attempt to flank their position. Wade watched Felix directing his men, noting their movements. They were trying to establish a base of fire, create space for their reinforcements to arrive. Standard military doctrine. Time to show them why standard responses get you killed. Cyrus, hit their rally point. Knox, watch for runners. Nash, be ready. Some of them are about to need medical attention. Multiple explosions ripped through the cartel's position. Wade moved through the chaos like a wraith, his suppressed rifle ending threats before they could materialize. 2. Decades of fighting had taught him the value of economy of motion. No wasted movements, no hesitation. "Contact front," a cartel soldier screamed. "He's inside our perimeter." Wade's reply was swift and silent. 3 more went down before they could turn to face him. "Who are you?" Felix screamed into the darkness, his voice carrying an edge of panic. "What kind of farmer fights like this?" "The kind you shouldn't have threatened," Wade replied, his voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. The cartel's first assault was falling apart. What had started as a confident attack had turned into a desperate struggle for survival. Of the original 20 vehicles, 8 were burning. Of the 40 men Felix had brought, less than half were still fighting. "Pull back," Felix ordered. "Full retreat. Get back to the rally point." "I don't think so," Wade said calmly. Knox's rifle cracked 3 times. The remaining vehicle's tires exploded, stranding them in the kill zone. "El Fantasma is going to kill us all," Felix muttered, realizing the trap they were in. "El Fantasma should have done his homework," Wade replied, stepping out of the shadows, behind Felix. "Should have asked why no one had ever successfully attacked this farm." Felix spun, raising his weapon, but he was too slow. Wade's strike was precise, efficient. The cartel leader dropped unconscious as his remaining men surrendered. "Area secure," Knox reported. "No runners. Nash, we've got wounded. What's the status on their reinforcements?" Wade directed the question to Zane, still inbound. 20 minutes out. Bigger force this time. Looks like they're bringing everything they have. Wade nodded, zip-tying Felix's unconscious form. "Good. Let them come. First wave was just to remind us of what we can do. Next wave is where we show them who we really are." The team gathered briefly, checking weapons and reloading. The night was still young, and this was just the beginning. The real battle was still to come. but now they were warmed up, synchronized, ready. "Just like old times," Nash said, treating a wounded cartel soldier. "Better," Wade replied, checking his ammunition. "This time we're fighting on our terms, on our ground, and this time we're finishing it for good." The aftermath of the first battle left Wade's farm eerily quiet. Burning vehicles cast orange glows across the Montana night, while zip-tied Cartel soldiers sat under Nash's watchful eye. Felix was starting to stir, his face showing the dawning realization of just how badly they'd miscalculated. 16 prisoners, Nash reported, finishing another field dressing. 3 critical but stable rest are walking wounded. Wade knelt beside Felix, who glared up at him with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Now then, let's talk about El Fantasma. Go." "To hell," Felix spat, then switched to Spanish, cursing. "Your choice," Wade replied in perfect Spanish, shocking Felix into silence. "But your reinforcements are coming into my kill zone in less than 15 minutes. Would be a shame if they made the same mistakes you did." Zane approached, laptop in hand. Intercepted their communications. Fantasma is coming personally. He's pissed, bringing in heavy weapons, professional contractors. "This isn't going to be like the first wave." Felix laughed, a harsh sound. "You're all dead. El Fantasma doesn't leave witnesses. He'll burn this whole valley to get to you." "How many?" Wade asked calmly. "Enough to kill you 10 times over," Felix sneered. "Former Mexican Special Forces, Colombian mercenaries, Cartel's best killers," Wade cut him off. "I meant how many families have you terrorized? How many farms have you taken? How many accidents have you arranged?" The question caught Felix off guard. For just a moment his arrogance cracked, showing uncertainty beneath. "Knox," Wade called out. "What do you see?" The sniper's voice crackled over their comms. "Multiple vehicles, different approach vectors. They're being smart this time. Thermal shows at least 40 troops, maybe more. Multiple heavy weapons teams. They're spreading out." "They're coordinating better now," Zane warned. "Multiple channels, encrypted comms. These guys are professionals." Wade moved like a shadow through his property, every step calculated. 2 cartel soldiers were setting up a machine gun nest. Good position, good fields of fire. They never saw him coming. The first went down to a throat strike, the second to a precision takedown he'd learned in advanced hand-to-hand combat. "Command vehicle moving," Knox called out. "El Fantasma repositioning. Strong security detail." "Let him," Wade replied. "He's looking for a pattern. Let's give him one." The battle shifted into a new phase. El Fantasma's men were good, clearly. Fought in urban combat before, but Wade's team had written the book on this kind of warfare. Every time the cartel forces thought they'd found an advantage, it turned into a trap. "RPG team at your 2 o'clock, Zane shouted. Wade rolled behind cover as rockets screamed overhead. The explosions were massive, professional-grade weapons. These weren't street thugs with black market gear. This was military hardware. Knox, priority target. Take out those RPGs. "Bit busy," the sniper grunted. "Got 3 teams trying to flank my position." "Cyrus, on it." More explosions lit up the night. The RPG team disappeared in a controlled blast that sent their weapons flying, but left them alive. Precision demolitions work that only decades of experience could achieve. El Fantasma was getting frustrated. His men were dying or being captured, yet they couldn't seem to get a solid fix on their opponents. Every advance met resistance from unexpected angles. Every tactical advantage evaporated before they could exploit it. "Push forward," he commanded. "There are only 5 men. We have the numbers." "Numbers don't mean much against ghosts," Wade's voice cut through their command channel. "How many men are you willing to lose tonight?" A burst of automatic fire answered. Him. Wade didn't flinch. He'd already moved from that position, anticipating the response. 2 more cartel soldiers went down to precise shots from his suppressed rifle. "West sector's getting heavy," Nash reported. "They're making a serious push." That's their feint, Wade replied. Knox, watch the east. That's where their real attack's coming. Sure enough, while one team pushed aggressively from the west, their best operators were moving quietly through the eastern approach. It was a solid tactic, one that would have worked against most opponents. Count 12, Knox said quietly. Elite team moving like professionals. These are their best. Good, Wade replied. Cyrus, Nash, shift east. Knox, hold your fire until my mark. Let's show them what real professionals can do. The elite cartel team moved with impressive skill, using every bit of cover, maintaining perfect spacing. They were halfway to their objective when Wade sprung his trap. Cyrus's charges illuminated the night, not damaging but disorienting. Before the cartel operators could adjust their night vision, Knox opened fire from his elevated position. Every shot found its mark, not killing but disabling, taking out knees and shoulders with surgical precision. Clear them up, Wade ordered, and Nash moved in with swift efficiency, securing the wounded operators. El Fantasma's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. Who are you people? You really should have done your research, Wade replied calmly. Asked around about who owned this farm, about why no one had ever successfully attacked it. A new sound cut through the night, helicopter rotors. Boss, they're bringing in air support, Zane warned. Right on schedule, Wade smiled. Cyrus? Oh. Yeah, got something special for choppers. Just say when. The helicopter swept in low, its spotlight cutting through the darkness. The door gunner opened up with a minigun, stitching a line of destruction across Wade's property. But the team had prepared for this too. Now, Wade commanded. Cyrus triggered a specialized charge, not an explosion but a massive flashbang designed specifically for aircraft. The helicopter pilot, momentarily blinded, yanked the stick back. The sudden move threw off the gunners. Knox's rifle cracked once. The spotlight exploded, plunging the helicopter back into darkness. 2 more precise shots disabled the minigun. You can land safely, Wade broadcast to the pilot, or you can crash. Your choice. The helicopter retreated, its pilot choosing wisdom over valor. On the ground, El Fantasma was shouting orders with increasing desperation. His elite team was down, his air support driven off, and his men were losing cohesion. Boss, Zane reported, checking his monitors. Cartel chatter picked up after our visitors left. They're spreading the story, calling this place El Valle de los Fantasmas, the Valley of Ghosts. Burn everything, El Fantasma ordered. Burn it all to the ground. His men deployed incendiary weapons, trying to deny Wade's team their carefully prepared positions. The night lit up with phosphorus and thermite, turning the battlefield into a hellscape of fire and smoke. They're getting desperate, Knox observed, relocating as flames consumed his previous sniper nest. Making mistakes. Careful, Wade warned. Desperate men are unpredictable. A massive explosion rocked the farmhouse as the cartel deployed satchel charges against the outer walls. The reinforced structure held, but the message was clear. They were done probing and ready to destroy everything. Sir, Nash called out. We've got wounded to evacuate. These fires are getting too close to the holding area. Wade processed the tactical situation in seconds. Knox, cover the east approach. Cyrus, buy us some time. Everyone else, fall back to position 3. We're not losing anyone tonight. Got something special saved for this, Cyrus replied grimly. Might want to cover your eyes. Multiple explosions, chained across the property. But these were different. Magnesium bright, creating walls of light that temporarily blinded anyone looking in their direction. In the confusion, Wade's team executed a fighting withdrawal, moving their prisoners and wounded to a fortified storm cellar they'd prepared for exactly this scenario. They're pushing hard on the west side, Knox reported, his rifle cracking steadily. These guys are different. Cartel's elite death squad. I recognize their tactics from the briefings. Los Fantasmas, Wade confirmed. El Fantasma's personal kill team. Ex-Mexican special forces who went rogue. They're good, Knox replied, punctuating his words with precise shots. Not good enough. The death squad moved with fluid grace, using the fires as cover. They were well equipped, Thermal imaging, advanced body armor, military-grade weapons. These weren't cartel thugs, these were professional killers. "Contact!" Zane shouted. 3 death squad members had breached the inner perimeter, moving with lethal precision toward the command center. Wade moved to intercept, but found himself pinned by well-coordinated fire. "Little help here?" "Working on it," Cyrus replied. The ground erupted beneath the death squad, not with explosives, but with compressed air and dirt, a non-lethal but disorienting blast that broke their formation. Wade capitalized instantly, closing the distance. The fight was brief, but brutal. The death squad members were excellent shots, but Wade had spent decades mastering close-quarter combat. The first went down to a throat strike knife disarm combination. The second managed to land a solid hit before Wade's elbow strike found the sweet spot behind his ear. The third proved tougher, clearly their hand-to-hand specialist. "Impressive," the man said in accented English, squaring up with a fighter's stance. "But you're still just an old man." Wade's response was a lightning-fast combination that ended with the specialist unconscious on the ground. "Age and treachery, kid." "Got a problem," Zane cut in, checking his monitors. "They're bringing up something big. Thermals showing. Oh hell, they've got a technical with a heavy autocannon." The sound of the 20mm cannon split the night, its rounds powerful enough to punch through Wade's reinforced walls. This wasn't about taking the farm anymore. This was about complete destruction. "Knox, can you get a shot?" "Negative," the sniper replied. "They've got it too well protected. Need a new angle." Wade thought fast. The cannon was devastating, but it had weaknesses. "Cyrus, remember Serbia? That arms depot with the tanks?" "Yeah, that was... Oh, I like where this is going." "Can you do it?" "Just like old times, boss. Give me 2 minutes." El Fantasma's voice boomed across their comms. "You see, this is what happens to those who resist. We will reduce this place to ash." The autocannon continued its devastating barrage, but Wade had fought against worse. "Zane, patch me into their frequency. Time to explain something to our friend." Channels open. Wade's voice was cold and professional. "That's an impressive gun. Russian-made, probably stolen from a military. Depot. Very effective against buildings, not so great against what's coming." "You're finished!" El Fantasma shouted. "Your defenses are breaking! Look to your left!" The cartel boss did, just in time to see Cyrus's surprise. The old barn, which they thought was just burning, suddenly revealed its secret. The entire structure had been rigged as a massive directional blast, focusing its force right at the technical. The explosion wasn't meant to destroy. That would have been too dangerous. Instead, it created a massive pressure wave that overturned the vehicle, rendering the cannon useless and sending El Fantasma's men scrambling for cover. "That was our excuse to keep things civil," Wade announced. "Push any harder, and we stop being nice. Kill them all." El Fantasma screamed, but there was an edge of fear in his voice now. His men were dying or surrendering, his best units were down, and his heavy weapons were being systematically eliminated. "Boss," Nash called out. "Got movement in the tree. Line. Looks like they're bringing up their reserve force." "Good," Wade replied. "About time they committed everything." "They're adapting again," Zane reported, "starting to target our supporters outside the valley. Pressure on suppliers, investigations into business partners. They're trying to isolate us." Wade watched another group of cartel soldiers surrender, their will to fight broken by the precise, methodical destruction of their force. El Fantasma had brought everything: professional operators, tactical experts, military equipment, and watched it all fail against opponents they couldn't even properly locate. "You know what your mistake was?" Wade broadcast to the remaining fighters. "You thought because we were retired we were soft. You never asked why someone with my background chose this valley, this land, this exact tactical position. Through their night vision, they watched El Fantasma's remaining forces begin to waver. The cartel boss was shouting orders, but his men had seen too much. They'd come expecting to overwhelm a stubborn old man with superior numbers and firepower. Instead, they'd found themselves facing ghosts, opponents who struck without warning and vanished before they could respond. "Final phase," Wade ordered. His team. "Show them why you don't bring a cartel to a Delta Force fight." The night was about to get much worse for El Fantasma and his men. They thought they were winning by forcing Wade's team to fall back. Instead, they were walking right into the trap he'd been setting up since the beginning. Wade watched El Fantasma's forces consolidate around their command vehicle. The cartel boss thought he was being smart, concentrating his remaining strength. Instead, he'd just put all his assets in one kill zone. "All units, execute Phoenix Protocol," Wade commanded. His team's acknowledgements came in quick succession. They drilled this scenario countless times in their active duty days. "Stand by for some fireworks," Cyrus announced. "Those charges we didn't use earlier? They're about to earn their keep." The counterattack began with surgical precision. Cyrus's charges detonated in sequence, not to kill, but to isolate. Walls of fire and smoke cut off escape routes, channeling the cartel forces exactly where Wade wanted them. "What are they doing?" El Fantasma demanded, watching his carefully positioned men suddenly trapped in overlapping fields of fire. "Teaching you about real combat," Wade replied over their channel. "Pay attention. This is how professionals work." Knox's rifle spoke first, taking out their communications array with 3 precise shots. Next went their vehicle engines, each disabled with methodical efficiency. The cartel forces were now deaf, blind, and immobile. "You think this changes anything?" El Fantasma shouted, but his voice carried an edge of panic. "I have more men, more resources." "Not anymore," Wade replied, as Zane's electronic warfare suite kicked in, flooding their frequencies with static. "Right now, your reinforcements are being intercepted by state police." Amazing what happens when someone provides actionable intelligence about cartel movements. El Fantasma's response was predictable, ordering his men to attack in all directions, but Wade's team had trained for exactly this scenario. They moved like ghosts through the smoke and chaos, appearing and disappearing at will. Contact front. A cartel soldier screamed, firing at shadows. Wade was already gone, his precise strikes devastating 3 more before they realized where he was. And by then, he'd moved again. "They're not human," another soldier cried out in Spanish. "They're everywhere! Keep fighting," El Fantasma commanded. But his authority was crumbling. His men were experienced soldiers, but they'd never faced anything like this. An enemy that seemed to materialize from nowhere, strike without warning, and vanish before they could respond. The cartel boss finally recognized the trap for what it was, but it was too late. His carefully planned operation had turned into a nightmare, his professional force systematically dismantled by opponents he couldn't even locate. "You're trapped in here with us," Wade broadcast to the cartel forces. "But we're not trapped in here with you. We are the trap." Cyrus's next series of charges demonstrated this perfectly. Careful detonation split the cartel's remaining forces into isolated pockets, each one cut off from support and exposed to precise fire from multiple angles. "Western group is surrendering," Zane reported. "Eastern group is movement. By the command vehicle. El Fantasma is making a break for it." "Let him run," Wade replied. "Right to where we want him." The cartel boss had grabbed 2 of his best remaining men, using the chaos to slip away from the main fight. He moved well. Clearly, he hadn't always been just a commander. But Wade had planned for this too. El Fantasma's escape route led him straight into a prepared position. One moment he was running, the next he was face to face with Wade himself. Impressive. "Operation you had here," Wade said conversationally, his rifle trained center mass. "Good men, good equipment, solid tactics. But you made one critical mistake." "And what's that?" El Fantasma snarled, his hand inching toward a concealed weapon. "You thought fear only worked one way." Wade's voice carried decades of combat experience. "You're used to being the one people fear. Tonight, you learn what real fear feels like. The cartel boss moved fast, drawing his pistol in a practiced motion, but Wade was faster. One precise shot knocked the weapon away. Another dropped El Fantasma's remaining guards. Around them, the battle was ending. Most of the cartel forces had surrendered, realizing the futility of their position. Those still fighting were being systematically isolated and neutralized. Dawn was breaking over the Montana mountains when state police arrived, their response coordinated through Wade's law enforcement contacts. The scene they found told its own story. Disabled vehicles, precisely wounded cartel soldiers, and enough evidence to dismantle their entire regional operation. Sarah Bennett pulled up in her truck as the last police cars departed. "Wade," she called out, taking in the battlefield. "When you said you'd handled worse." "Sometimes the best defense is having the right friends," he replied, watching his team secure the perimeter. "People you can trust when things get rough." The sun rose fully, revealing the extent of the night's battle. Wade's property bore the scars of combat, but his defenses had held. More importantly, the cartel had learned a costly lesson about underestimating retired operators. "They'll be back," Sarah warned. "No," Wade said confidently. "They won't." Tonight they learned why this valley was never just another target, why some old soldiers are best left alone. In the following weeks, the cartel's entire regional operation collapsed. Properties were reclaimed, families returned, and the valley began to heal. But something had changed permanently. The locals now understood that their quiet farming community harbored protectors most people wouldn't believe existed. Wade stood on his porch weeks later, his team gathered one last time before returning to their own lives. The valley stretched before them, peaceful again, but forever changed. "You know," Knox said, cleaning his rifle one final time, "we spent years in the shadows, conducting operations nobody could know about. Now we're hiding in plain sight, running a defense network that officially doesn't exist." "Best disguise is the truth," Wade replied. "We are helping the community protect itself. Everything else is just details." Atlas lay at his feet, alert as ever, while Wade watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. The cartel had brought their best: professional operators, tactical experts, military equipment, all defeated not by superior force, but by the power of experience, preparation, and the unbreakable bonds between old warriors. They'd learned the hard way that sometimes the deadliest predators are the ones that don't look threatening at all. And somewhere in Mexico, Cartel leaders were spreading the word: stay away from that valley in Montana. It's protected by ghosts you don't want to meet. The end.